Hello and welcome to another episode of Sushi and the Swordfish. I'm Sushi, and of course with me is...
I'm the Swordfish. Good to be here.
Yeah, for sure. We're ready to rock out on a really exciting episode today. I'm glad that we were able to get together and do this. Took us a little bit of time, not too long, about a week, and I think we've both kind of had an opportunity to go through the topic today and watch this movie. I think for me, I think I did 3 times, well, but 2.5. How about for yourself?
I've been watching it in and out for just like you about 3 times
Mhm.
over this last week, and just enjoying it, and actually going back on clips. So you could even say it's a couple more on some of them, but
Okay.
definitely enjoyed the ride.
Awesome. And we're actually referring to 1984's This Is Spinal Tap, which I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't find any other details. It seems to be the first quote unquote mockumentary film. I don't know. Are you sure? Like, are you aware of that? Or do you know if there's another movie maybe that precedes this?
Uh, I would have to say that there's probably a couple more before this.
Hmm.
I'd have to go back, but I do recall there's something before this. Just the way that it's set up, I'd have to say that this is probably a homage to something, but
Okay.
not off the top of my head.
Okay. And that's fine. Like, we're not professional researchers or anything like that. But yeah, so we're looking at Spinal Tap today, which I think still holds a pretty good amount of what's the word I want? Not like fervor, but just I guess acclaim to some degree. I think there's still a lot of people that enjoy this, but it's also a little bit on the fringe too. I don't think it's as well known as it once was. I do see it in a lot of like top comedy lists. I mean, it's kind of a musical, but it's kind of a comedy, and then it's a fake documentary as well. But it does seem to still hold a lot of, uh, I guess, clout in the comedy section if you go check for comedy films.
I'd agree. I'd say though, going over this last week is I started to remember movies just where there were references to this movie, and how
Hmm.
much how big of an influence it had on individuals. Like Wayne's World comes to mind,
Yeah.
and just how many people enjoy this movie. I was actually gifted this DVD
Okay.
as like a birthday present. So it's one of those movies that it's either you love it or it kind of goes to the wayside. Even my wife watching this the second time around, she was like, "This is really funny," and the first
Hmm.
time she wasn't as receptive to it. So
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to this talk we're gonna have today.
Awesome. Well, let's just jump right in. We've got some set points we're going to tackle, but why don't we just start with just some basic talking points, just around the film, maybe how you came into seeing the movie, and we'll kind of move in from there to those talking points.
Okay, so in terms of how you came in to see the movie, how would you mean? Like just in terms of the first time you saw it, or?
Well, just more so you got it for you were gifted the movie. So did you know anything about it before you were gifted it, or was it just a total surprise?
It was a total surprise. I think we're similar in this regard, in that the movies we were raised with, kind of like what my dad provided me, just what was on cable at the time.
Hmm.
PBS Superstation is kind of
Yeah.
our role, and it was never on any of the channels that we had
Yeah.
uh, here in Canada, and it was just never a movie that was on my radar. I didn't have a lot of people that were in bands around me.
Hmm.
Uh, And I think just seeing it for the first time, it was just a different experience than what I was used to.
Hmm.
And what about yourself?
So for me, I forget where I first learned about Spinal Tap. I think probably the first true any sort of semblance of knowledge of Spinal Tap would have been that clip on The Simpsons
Yeah,
where they made guest appearances on there. I don't know what year that would have been, 91 or 2, something like that.
something like that. Yeah.
Harry Shearer is obviously the voices of several Simpsons characters, but particularly Mr. Burns and Smithers. So I'm assuming that's where the connection to Spinal Tap comes from to the TV show. That would have been my first like any sort of knowledge of the Spinal Tap group. And then I must have been looking at comedy movies or something. I don't know exactly what year it was, but maybe somewhere around between 2011 and 13. And I happened to be on a flight that had it in their catalog, and I watched it, and it was a really late, whatever, 13-hour overnight flight. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it that one sit through, and even it was on a tiny screen. It was just I'm trying not to laugh like sitting on the plane. It's pretty hard not to laugh at some of the stuff that was going on.
Going to The Simpsons is what I remember being about 11, 12, is just not getting why they were making fun of this band so much, and why this band had water in the stage, and just they
drummer.
were this hard rock band, but nothing was going right. And I didn't get a lot of the jokes at the time, and then watching the movie, you just kind of run into it and go, oh yeah, this is why. And it's like, sorry, just like you, it was a total surprise though, watching this movie and really enjoying it the first time.
I think the funny thing is, and I assume they're not considering The Simpsons as part of the, I don't know, ether of the Spinal Tap group. Otherwise, that would have been their demise, because the bus flies off and explodes. And I don't think there was a chance of survival with the way that bus explodes on this.
Well, I just remember watching them on the bus and talking about how great of a show it was.
Oh, it was a great show last night. And then suddenly, I swear it's Otto that's driving like crazy. And you seem to think it's somebody. It doesn't really matter. There's a school bus that's flying at them, and the bus just like literally flips onto its side and then falls off a cavern and explodes. So.
Yeah, no, it's a great episode. Homer, like, just our love of The Simpsons, but just him eating those pork rinds, enjoying himself.
Isn't he singing Spanish Flea or something? And then all the cops are showing up in the background and stuff. He's just totally oblivious to what's happening.
That's great.
That's pretty awesome. Okay, but yeah, well, that's pretty awesome. So I guess we'll just do a couple of quick points. Is that Spinal Tap seems to be making fun of several rock bands of that time and era. I did read that there were a number of bands that initially were either confused or thinking they were real performers, B, were thinking that they were mimicking them and stealing their whole like kind of life story as a band, and wanted to sue them, or C, were just completely confused as to what was supposed to be humorous here because it was too realistic to them. So
it's a great point, and I think just I tried to put myself back in that time of just seeing something like this. Like, nobody had like that music mockumentary the way that they did, but I think what's most impressive is just how talented they are, and how every song has a distinct feel, and you really get into the band, but it just gets sillier and sillier as you go on. And I just really enjoyed how much you enjoy the songs overall. And just kind of the feel is that no matter the stage of the band, it's just everything kind of fits the way it should, and that's why that confusion could come up.
And so these three actors, from my understanding too, they actually can play their instruments. So it's not just them trying to mimic over top of the music. Like, maybe they're not really, I don't know, as skilled as perhaps maybe somebody who plays in a band for 30 years or whatever. But they have some level of skill. So I think that also adds to it. It's not just, and they wrote the lyrics to the songs. They helped with the script of the movie, so they're involved in every aspect. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to make this, we'll pretend to play instruments, somebody else will write the lyrics, we're just following through with all that. They're so hands-on with everything that's in the movie.
Yeah, and you can really see that as just even kind of getting ready for this, is going through some of their later videos where they do their live performances, and just the talent and just kind of the ability to kind of be off the cuff on a lot of the things they do and just kind of work with each other. You can really tell, just even the bloopers alone, and just kind of the special features of the DVD, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. You can just tell how much fun they had with this movie, and just how much they enjoyed making this and going off the cuff.
For sure. And so the director of this movie is Rob Reiner, who, again, has worked in a lot of comedies and so forth. But I think he, in combination with the three main actors who's it, Mike McKean, Christopher Guest, and Harry Shearer, all four of them just seem to be completely on the same page in every aspect of the movie. And I can't imagine trying to be on set, but these guys don't break character. Like you see them even in like interviews or meeting like other real bands like Metallica and stuff, and they don't even crack a smile. Like they're so deadpan in the way they're talking, and it's just so obnoxious, the stuff they're saying. Like they're so oblivious. Their characters are so oblivious to everything that's happening around them. You would think one of them would break character at some point, and they just don't. Like they're so engrossed in their characters.
Absolutely, and that's what makes the movie, is just the complete selling of this, of just how you can tell how much they enjoy doing this, but how much they were able to kind of edit it where, how do you do kind of just a freestyle, we're going to say whatever we need to, you know, half the script was thrown out because they just kind of went for it, and
maybe more than half from what I read. I heard they basically had an outline of what the scene would be, and they didn't write anything down. They just had, here's the scenario, and everybody just go for it, basically. Ask whatever you want to ask, and we'll ad-lib everything.
You know, and it doesn't surprise me, because it's just that type of movie where you just get into it because everything feels so natural.
This is a hard movie to, I don't even know if we're really reviewing so much as we're talking about it. I don't even know where to take this. Like I said, I wrote down some points for us to go through, but I don't even know which ones are the proper ones to start with, because there's just so much that we can go through. But okay, let's start somewhere. Why don't we talk about some of our favorite things about the movie, and we're going to kind of break it down into these sections rather than just say, oh, this or that, because you can literally take just about any scene, and we can talk probably for hours on specific scenes. But of the message that I sent you, why don't we start with, because you've already mentioned it, your favorite song, at least that's presented in the movie. We won't go into because Spinal Tap does have records after this and so forth, but what's your favorite song that's actually presented in the movie?
Okay, and I don't want to cheat, but I'll just say that I have a favorite song, but watching it the second time over, there was a second song that surprised me, and it was a really good way. But what I'll start with is the first time in the last month or so that I watched it, my favorite song was Big Bottom, and it has to do with the bass line.
Yep.
Of just it's got this amazing start to the song, and it's just got the dirtiest lyrics, and just the camera angles that they have of Nigel alone.
Yep.
And not to mention Derek Smalls, and it's just
with his S&M gear, whatever he's wearing.
It's so amazing, and like I said, is Michael McKean, of just how satisfied he is singing these lyrics. Like, there's something so amazing about watching him just sing, just wonderful lyrics that just hit the core of what this movie's about.
Yeah.
And I'll read a couple of them where it goes, Big Bottom, talk about mud flaps,
yeah.
My gal's gone, drive me out of my mind, how can I leave this behind?
Yeah.
And Derek Smalls just, with that bass, just really enjoying himself.
Yeah.
It hit the right way when I watched it.
Well, and all three of them are playing bass. I just found out, like the day before recording this, that all three of them are actually only playing bass. There's no lead guitar. They're all playing bass. And just that line you just said, Big Bottom, how can I leave this behind, is just, it's got if you think about that line, it's like, how can I leave this behind? Meaning, like, he can't give up that booty kind of thing. Like, it's so clever. It's if you don't think about it while you're hearing the lyric, it just goes over your head, and then you're like, wait a second. I think when he's saying behind, he's still referring to the bottom that he was talking about earlier. It's just super clever.
But at no point does that bass line leave you throughout the whole song. And it's like another song where
it's so good.
Where the bass doesn't leave, like you just can't forget about it. But the other thing I'll say, and hopefully as a transition for you, is on this second to third viewing, is the editing was so amazing for when Hellhole enters the movie, and it's just like you don't expect it, and then there's just a loud yell of Hellhole, and just you enjoy that entire scene itself. But for me, I'm gonna go with Big Bottom. Stick with that.
Okay.
How about yourself? What is your favorite song?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the first time you watch this movie and that song comes on and you're like, okay, what is this stupid bass line? And then you hear the first part of the lyrics and you're like, what is he even talking about? And then and just like talking about bum cakes, like it's just it's such a it's almost like borderline disturbing, but it's so funny at the same point. I will say your point about Hellhole. You texted me that the other day, and I just immediately burst out laughing because I wasn't expecting it. And the line in Hellhole that gets me is just that you know where you stand in hell. It's just so, yeah, these lyrics they're so ridiculously clever. But yeah, all of the way that Big Bottom plays out is just, it's so it's super memorable. If you only see this movie once, you're probably gonna remember that song out of all of them. Because you have like Rock and Roll Creation, which just kind of sounds like a lot of standard rock music, even the lyrics and so forth. And maybe Stonehenge might be the other one, but that's, I think, more so because of the scenario, more so, and as well as for Rock and Roll Creation, more so than the actual song Big Bottom, I think, just really stands out.
Well, I will say though, as I was laughing pretty hard in the army base when they're singing Sex Farm. So yeah, I don't want to leave out Sex Farm, just how ridiculous it is, as these people are so disgusted with them.
Well, that and at the very end when you have Derek Smalls just being like, it's a new take on what sex is all about. he's so serious about talking about this disgusting song. It's too funny to pass up that one too. You're right. It's pretty. They're all funny in their own way.
But like I said, that would be my key point though, is that don't underestimate Michael McKean, David St. Hubbins, on just how much he enjoys singing this song. The sly smile as he's singing.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. So
yeah, it's pretty darn funny.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I think we got that one out of the way. But yeah, as I said, I think you can find some enjoyment in pretty much all of the songs that are used in the movie. But I think, as I said, if you only watch this once, Big Bottom just seems to really stand out. And we won't talk about the flesh tuxedo and all. It's just they're so gross, these lyrics. Okay, why don't we move from there though, since we're already referencing these three characters. What about your favorite band member? So obviously there's three main band members, but there are two additional band members as well. So we have David St. Hubbins, who's played by Michael McKean. He's kind of, I would say he's like the leader of the band, right? Like he does lead vocals. And you have Nigel Tufnell, who is lead guitar. And then Derek Smalls, who's the bass guitar. And then the keyboardist is, why is he slipping out of my brain? The keyboardist. Viv Savage. And then who is the drummer at this point? I can't remember.
I have to pull that one up.
I can't. Basically, there's a running gag in the movie about the drummers continually dying in these horrible ways that they can't seem to speak on. So I can't remember the drummer. The drummer. Sorry.
Mick Shrimpton.
So basically, the two other bandmates don't really get a lot of screen time. It's primarily the three main actors, but of those actors, who would you say is your favorite band member?
I, it's tough because Nigel's great.
Hmm.
Derek Smalls is great. I thought about this a lot. I just think that David St. Hubbins is so ridiculous, and he plays it the straightest out of all of them.
Yeah,
If you
I would say so.
But he just keeps the band together the entire time. Like
Hmm.
his singing, the lyrics, and the way that he's the most straightforward band member. Everybody else is ridiculous, and they're allowed to be ridiculous because of him.
Hmm.
If he doesn't play this as straight as possible, you don't have those two other band members who are amazing, and I almost picked both of them,
Hmm.
Nigel and Derek, but I'm going to go with David St. Hubbins just
Okay.
because, like I said, with Big Bottom,
Hmm.
Sex Farm, I think with his reaction to that little Stonehenge
Yeah.
thing when he's yelling at the manager,
What he's got when his jaw just drops when it comes down.
when Nigel leaves the band and he's
Yeah.
talking about how sedated he is and otherwise he'd be in a really bad mood.
Yeah.
It's I just think that overall his performance really carries what the movie's about.
Okay, fair enough. It's funny, between the three, Derek kind of has the least, I feel like he has the least screen time and presence, whereas David and Nigel have a lot to play off of each other.
Well, they're fire and ice.
Yeah. So I had a hard time. Before, about a week ago, I was completely set that Derek was my favorite band member, like far and away. I think just
Yep.
because he's so subtle, and he is by far the most brain dead out of like all three of those characters. He's the one who just is completely lost, like all the time. Like they're having a conversation about hamburgers, and he'll walk over and he'll be like talking about the green grass or something. He's just so out there. But Nigel is now far and away my favorite, my favorite character.
What scene was it that did it for you?
It's just he has so many one-to-one scenes with Marty DeBurgi, the fake director. He has so many scenes, and I think it's just him constantly going exactly about every single thing. He's always cutting him off. He'll ask him a question. He'll say, "So what do you think about that?" And as soon as he's about to answer, he says, "Exactly, nothing." He's always cutting him off with some stupid response.
Yeah.
We'll get to a favorite part in it later on, but even just when they get their album and it's completely black, and he's like, "This can't be any blacker." It's the pauses in his speech. It's his behavior on stage. I think if I had to point out just one stupid thing that makes me laugh every time about him, is when they get lost getting to the stage, and they're wandering around, and then the camera just is like positioned while they're kind of walking to the left, and he stands right in front of the camera and he sticks out his tongue and he starts flicking it. It just makes me laugh because he looks so serious, but he looks like such a jerk at the same point. I don't know. I just think it's just the play. I think if you don't have the Rob Reiner or Marty DeBurgi, then maybe Nigel isn't my favorite. But yeah, I think it's just he's so adamant and so sure of everything he says.
Yeah. No, it's an excellent choice, and like I said, I went around this topic of who was my favorite, and then they all bring something to the table, but I think of Nigel just like the stupid piano scene, and I don't know if we'll talk about that later, but just the D chord being the saddest of them all.
Yeah.
And just the deadpan delivery of "Lick My Love Pump."
Well, it's also Marty Berge sitting there saying, "Oh, that's really pretty. You know, that's nothing like what you normally play. What do you call that?" It's just he's so serious too when he's asking him about it, and then he just nonchalantly, "It's called Lick My Love Pump." And he, without a beat, he doesn't hesitate. He just throws it right at him. It's just,
Yeah. And I do like Rob Reiner just looking at him like, "Oh, that's good. That's a good choice."
that's pretty awesome. I mean, the other two, they they're really kind of unsung heroes in little ways because they have some pretty funny lines. They don't get a lot of time to say anything, and that Viv Savage and Nick Shrimpton.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ruining anything. Hopefully, we're not spoiling anything. But Mick ultimately ends up with a fate, unlike any other, just like any other drummer in the band. And what other way could you end this movie without the guy literally exploding on stage?
Spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, well, earlier when he's like, it happens, what does he say, 25 times a year or something? There is a funny thing about Viv Savage, though, that isn't shown in the movie. He is allegedly killed off screen because he visits the grave of Mick Shrimpton. He blows up at the grave.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It's because, I guess, of a methane gas buildup. That's the supposed story that's how he dies.
Well, Mick Shrimpton surprised me as well. Like, just watching it, of just when he's sitting in that bathtub and he's talking about, what would you be rather doing if you weren't in the band? And he's like, well, if there's sex and drugs, I'd be doing that. And
well, and doesn't get asked earlier, is like, aren't you worried about what's happened to the other drummers? Like, it doesn't seem, and what does he say? Something like, oh, the odds are in my favor or something.
He's like, I was a little bit scared at first, but
well, then Marty DeBerge says something like, it's a pretty low chance you're going to die or something. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like I said, it's a pretty tough choice between the three. I think at any given watch, you might change your mind. Like that goes to the credit of those actors, right? Of being able to really play off each other and really balance out the performances.
Yeah, well, no disrespect to Derek Smalls, because Derek Smalls can, when you watch that movie the first time, he kind of comes across as just the biggest creep that you've ever seen.
He's got like a new woman like every scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's pretty funny. Okay, all right, let's move from there. So, what do you think about, who is your favorite secondary character in the movie? Now, and let's keep the other two band members off since we kind of clumped them with the main three. But who kind of stands out in the movie as somebody that just, you see them and they may not have a ton of screen time, but just still makes you laugh because it's just, they're so ridiculous in their moment in the film.
It's tough. There's a lot of really good secondary characters in this movie. I think the guy that's standing out to me the most right now is the hotel clerk.
And he's only in the movie for what, like 30 seconds?
No, but he's just so amazing of like how they call him a fruit.
Well, he doesn't just call him a fruit. This twisted fruit.
And just how that's the way that God made me. It's amazing, but no. That one stood out. As soon as you said it, I was thinking of him. But honestly, let's give homage to the band manager.
Yeah, Ian Faith.
Of how he's always upset. He's got a cricket. What is that thing called?
I think it's just a cricket bat.
A cricket bat going around all the time. He doesn't lose faith in this band whatsoever.
Well, he kind of does, but it's not until, is it his wife? Is it Mike McKean's wife? Girlfriend? Actually, even Nigel doesn't know. It's like, your wife, girlfriend, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's his girlfriend.
Yeah. I think then he finally kind of loses faith because he quits, right? He quits the band. He's sick of dealing with stuff. But it's funny, he only quits the band because he knows he's in the wrong. Because his whole thing is like, when that stupid mishap happens with him with the Stonehenge, he full well knows. He's standing there with that big grin on his face as that thing's coming down.
Yeah.
And he knew he had in his back pocket that he was going to blame Nigel for that.
I feel bad, but I got to bring up two other characters that really hit the mark for me, and that's Artie Fufkin.
Yeah.
Paul
Oh,
Schaefer
played by Paul Schaefer, who's it's hard to tell that it's him.
just enjoying himself.
Yeah.
Kick my, kick my.
This is my fault. This is all my fault.
And then Fran Drescher, and
Yeah, she's actually pretty good in this.
I think it's just, I think it's just how angry she is about the CD cover that they have, or the vinyl cover of
Yeah.
just smell the glove, or
It's a woman on her knees with a glove being shoved in her face. Well, what's wrong with that manager? What's wrong with that?
yeah, well, that's why Ian Faith is the best. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah. This is 1984. Exactly, this is 1984. He has no clue. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
And Sir Sushi, what's your favorite
I
character?
mean, those are all great. I can't be remiss to not mention, though, and these two literally are in the movie for 10 seconds. Blink and you miss them, but Dana Carvey and Billy Crystal show up in this movie. And Billy Crystal, when he's like, come on, mime is money, mime is money. They're these stupid mimes. And the first time I watched it, I was like, wait a second, was that Billy Crystal? I was like, that can't be Billy Crystal. Because he's full makeup, you can't see it's his face. But then then you kind of see that because he's got the short curly hair or whatever. And then you see his name come up in the credits, and you're like, oh wow, like there's quite a few cameos in this movie that you don't expect. And then Dana Carvey's out there. What is he giving, like hot dogs or something? I can't remember, but
Well, he's miming, trying to eat these hot dogs.
So like they don't really have much of a play. But I think the mime is money is it's like a pretty underrated quote in the movie. But I think it's Ian Faith. It's definitely the manager. I think he has enough screen time that you get to know him well enough to make fun of him with his, and just whenever he's trying to look serious and he goes cross-eyed, he's got like that lazy eye, and it makes you laugh. And nobody has any respect for him. Like he's meeting his peers and they just ignore him, and he's so completely incompetent about everything. And just the way he's talking, like, isn't Boston like really known for having a really strong college scene in that part when he's like, the Boston show is canceled. Don't worry, it's not a college town or whatever. Like he's just, I think it's just how dismissive he is of so many things.
No, he's amazing, and it's just the whole thing of just how much he appreciates the band, how he loves the band, how he wants them to succeed, even though you can tell that he knows what's going on the entire time. Of just where this band is going, that they're kind of a sinking ship at this point. But just how he reacts when somebody's on the phone, and just how he's so positive the entire time.
Well, except when he gets that phone call about the cover, and I don't even know what he says. Not that I probably want to say what he says, because he does say something pretty vulgar. I can't remember what it is, but he says something, and then when he gets up the phone, he's like, they won't run the cover or whatever.
Yeah.
But he does have one like actually clever thing that he does, and that's when, remember, they see that cover for, is it Lou Reed or somebody they're talking about, and they're talking about a whole bunch of like scantily clad women on the cover, but whoever the performer is being like chained to a table.
Yeah.
And they're saying, and he's like, that's reverse empowerism for women or whatever, and like, we should have thought of that. It's like, that was actually pretty clever on his part, because he could have gotten some more heat for that. So
Yeah. No, he knew what to say, and that's what makes that whole transition to the girlfriend being the manager.
Mm.
It just shows you how everything falls apart, and when he comes back, everything's good to go one more time. So
I believe this is a band meeting. He just loses his mind.
He's just one of those characters that never goes over the top, and just like I said with David St. Hubbins, of just, they stay kind of low key so that everything else can be accentuated, and I think he's a great character for that.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay, I'm kind of struggling where to go from this, because our next 4 points that we wanted to hit are, again, they're all obviously really funny. What would you say is, and you could potentially connect two of them, but what would you say is your favorite prop in the movie? And there's several props in this movie.
My favorite prop, just when I saw that point, is the Stonehenge statue. It's the most ridiculous thing that you could possibly have. It's what got my wife into the movie.
Mm.
It's just when you see that thing come down, and I love the camera angle, how it makes it look bigger than it actually is, but
Yeah.
when it actually gets to the stage, and then how upset they are and how they have to kind of play over this thing, and
Yeah.
just how it leads to the next scene, which is just one of the funniest lines, just about complaining about this stupid thing, and
Yeah.
it's not that big of a deal, and it should
Yeah.
have been a big.
Well, what is Saint Hub or David says something? It wasn't supposed to be a comedy act, and it turned into a comedy act. And then that's when that Ian says something about, oh, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't meant to be funny or something. He's like, well, it sure felt. I can't remember what he said. Something, we sure felt like idiots on stage or something because the thing
Yeah,
came down.
yeah,
You made a good point though, Quick. This movie does a lot of unique angles to showcase and like, look, Big Bottom is a great example of that, right? Like really
yeah,
zooming in on the low angle of these guys' crotches and stuff, and so they do a great job of that with the Stonehenge prop for sure.
yeah. No, it's fantastic, and the dwarfs and how much bigger they are than this prop,
Yeah,
and just how they try to play this thing as like a big deal for Stone. It's just a really good prop, and it just shows how everything is falling apart at that point.
hmm
Of just nothing is right, and even throwing in the jabs about how Nigel doesn't know anything, and how do you just for him writing the inches on the
yeah.
napkin, it's pretty amazing.
Well, and for
How,
him to use that as his defense is pretty clever again.
absolutely. How about yourself? What's your favorite prop?
I have two. I'm gonna cheat, and this one is so underrated. It's right at the beginning of the movie when they arrive at the airport in New York, and that the limo driver's standing there, and he's got the sign, and it says Spinal Tap. I think it's super underrated, and
Yeah,
and I forget it every time. But as soon as I watch a movie, it makes me laugh because it's just so, if it's blink and you'll miss it kind of gag again. But that Spinal Tap, and isn't it later too in the movie when they go to the Air Force Base? Don't they call it? Don't they say? What do they call? He doesn't call him Spinal Tap. They call him something else. Ah,
oh,
Runway Tap or something like. I can't think of what it is now. Oh, I've drawn a blank.
I can't remember. All I'm thinking about is that stupid sign that says puppet show and Spinal Tap.
And isn't Spinal Tap even in smaller font?
Something like that. They're
Yeah,
like, oh, we tried to get Spinal. It should have been Spinal Tap
yeah,
and puppets,
yeah.
but
But my actual favorite is for sure when they get the Smell the Glove album in hand, and just how stressed out they looked at getting just a pure black cover. And it's so clever to play off of the Beatles' White Album in that way,
yeah.
and just to have that. And we kind of spoke about this, I think it was yesterday. There seems to be some connection that when Metallica released the Black Album, that they actually did that as a tribute to Spinal Tap. I don't know if that's for sure true, that if it's just a rumor, but if it is, that's pretty crazy to think. And that's like by far their most well-known album, and it's essentially a joke.
Well, I didn't do as much research on it, but I think it was a joke. But they were saying that Metallica had to pay 1% to Spinal Tap because Spinal Tap was going to sue them
Oh, really?
using the rights to the Black Album.
hmm
But again, with Spinal Tap, you just never know, and I wasn't in the mood to be researching whether Spinal Tap got one.
But I mean, also just to have your album's name be Smell the Glove, like what a disgusting name. Like it's just so stupid.
Oh, what was it? What was it supposed to be before Smell the Glove? Wasn't it supposed to be an even dirtier album?
Probably. And then what's the one like in Intravenous de Milo? And they're looking at like, oh, that was pretty clever. That's pretty clever.
That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
But I think just that prop, it it has some mileage to it, and there's a deleted scene that doesn't get used where they're signing it, and that guy can't read the signatures because they're using black markers, and they're telling him to tilt it towards the light and everything, and how stressed out the guy's getting.
Absolutely.
It's just such it was clever too because they didn't really have to do anything. They just had to get black cardboard essentially and just cut it out as the size of an LP sleeve. That's all they had to do. They didn't have to go to any trouble to make it.
Yeah, well, not to mention the looks they have on their face when they see it.
Yeah.
Well,
there
is none more black.
Yeah, can this be any what does he say? Can this be any more blacker? And he's like, none. None more black or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really funny. And how excited that Ian is too. He full well knows that this thing is going to look black. Like he's 100% in the know, but he's trying to sell it on them to be. He's such a creep bag.
No, he's amazing, and it just I don't know why it hit me the right way, but when he's at that party and Sir David's on the phone and he just runs to the phone just so he could be like, Sir David.
Yeah.
Just enjoying himself.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, I just had something else. Oh, in the DVD commentary, which is done by the three main band members, within the first 5 minutes that Ian gets brought up because he's in the first few minutes when they get off the plane. The first thing they say about him is Ian's the only man that you can talk to who will smile and lie in your face, and then they pause and they're like, and also can lie in your face with a straight face. It's just like so stupid. It's so dumb, like such a dumb comment that they make, but it's funny. Okay, well, yeah. Again, there's several more props in the movie that could be brought up. You could talk about the pods that they come out of the whatever the creation pods. There's so many. The amp that goes to 11. It goes on and on and on.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. What would you say is your? And again, this kind of could connect to the props. What would you say is your favorite mistake in the movie or like mishap that happens? And again, this could connect to, we're going to get to a favorite scene, so these all might kind of intertwine.
Favorite mishap, the one that comes to mind definitely is Derek Smalls getting trapped in the pod. And it's just how they build that scene, and it just goes on for like 2 minutes of them doing an entire song. And there's hammers.
That hammer is just amazing. Like you hear it over the music, just ting, 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 and it's just constant.
Yeah, there's a blowtorch, and it's just the fact that he gets out right as the song ends, and he's so excited to get out.
Yeah,
gets his arm stuck, and that's the end of the song.
Yeah, it's pretty memorable.
It's so stupid. But no, it's a great scene, and I'd say that absolutely is my favorite mishap. What about you?
I don't know. Like I said, there's so many. I don't know if it's so much a mishap, but again, you can pick anything, right? But I'm trying to think of something maybe that we haven't brought up yet. Maybe it's when Derek Smalls, it's probably his biggest scene is when he goes through the airport security.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's necessarily a mishap because I mean, he seems to have done this on purpose, but it's just the behavior of himself and how serious it is when he goes through and it beeps. Like, sir, do you have any coins in your pocket? And he's like, yeah. And he like takes out the coins and it goes through one more time, beeps again. Oh, I got my tuner for my guitar or whatever he says, right? And goes through it again. And then they, beeps the third time. So they start taking the metal wand on him. And when it just starts going haywire around his crotch, and he just looks so serious. And sir, do you have any plates or metal inside your body? And he just, no, I don't think so. He's like, I don't think so. Like he doesn't even know. And then suddenly pulls out this abnormally large cucumber wrapped in tin foil. It's just so disgusting. And then he does that stupid shrug, like, oh, like this is normal. But you can hear the other band members behind him like, come on, like they're getting stressed out because he can't get through.
Well, I think underrated is the airport security being intrigued by him
Yeah, yeah,
as they got the metal detector going by his bag.
yeah. Well, the two, like the one lady looks even more like one lady looks almost disgusting. The other lady's just trying not to laugh. Yeah, it's pretty
No,
funny.
I would say just as you were saying that though, the other mishap that really makes me laugh is the Hello Cleveland trying to walk to stage
Yeah,
and not being able to find it for half an hour,
yeah.
and how long that stupid scene goes on.
Walk past the janitor several times. He's like, "No, no, you got to go to the left."
There's like three doors and there's a ladder and there's a you gotta take a right past this door.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, of course there could be any number of mishaps that happen in the movie that are pretty darn funny. So,
For sure.
okay. Um, we only got a couple left here. Why don't we jump into, because I think the probably the most prominent thing about the movie is the quotes. They tend to sit with people really for a long time. So what would you say if you could only pick one, as hard as that's going to be, would be your favorite scene in the movie?
Hmm, that's tough because I would say that scene wise, just the one that hits amazing is "Lick My Love Pump." Of just it's such a different scene from the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie is just so loud in your face. There's always something funny going on.
Does that
But
scene occur? Sorry to cut you off, but does that scene occur when we see that the friction between David and Nigel is like at its highest point just before, like it shows them actually like squabble and fight? Is that so? It's like he almost looks like he's sad and dejected, and that's why he's playing this song.
I think it might be just a little before that.
Hmm.
Like I think it's just more just talking about how ridiculous this whole band is.
Hmm.
Of just I think they're kind of at like the crescendo of where the movie is there. But it's just they go into the scene and it just kind of catches your attention because it is exactly what Rob Reiner says. Oh, that's kind of pretty. Oh, that's you know, and it's like the saddest chord of them all. And and of course Robbie Reiner has to be like, oh yeah, that's kind of beautiful. What do you call that? And just and like I said, I sent you that text a couple times this week, and it never fails.
No, it makes me laugh every time because it's so unexpected. You're really expecting him to say some, I don't know, some Italian word that would sound really, I don't know, affluent or something, right? Some sort of classical name or something. And no, it just sounds like any other title that they would have on one of their albums.
Absolutely, no, it's fantastic, and
I'd like to hear the rest of the lyrics.
yeah. And what about yourself? What's your favorite
So,
scene?
I mean, because I can't remember exactly which one it is, it's and it's cheating a bit. It's the scenes with Nigel and Marty DeBurgi. And they kind of all, if you could collectively put them all as one scene, they'd probably only amount to what, 5 to 7 minutes max. And let's
Yeah,
take out the Lick My Love Pump. I'm thinking more of when he's talking about his guitars.
yeah,
And when he when he pulls it up to him and he's like, listen, listen. And they both go quiet and he's like, this is sustain. And he's like, and then he's like, oh, and then he looks at him. He's like, I don't hear anything. He's like, well, you would if it was playing. It's just, again, it's so stupid. It's like, well, of course you would hear something if it was playing. And then, of course, that leads into the how serious he is. And he's like, you got to get, most bands can only go up to 10. And he's like, we got to get that little kick to get over the edge. And then he just stops and says, well, couldn't you just make 10 the loudest? And then that long pause, and he's thinking, and he's got that cigarette in his hand.
yeah.
And the smoke, and it's just burning, and it's like, but these go to 11. And then how it just cuts to the next scene. I just think it's that play between those two because he's so serious in asking the questions and he's so sure of his answers. And he's kind of wondering, like, how come you can't get this? Why are you asking? To Nigel, they're dumb questions. But to the viewer, they're completely normal, intelligent questions you would ask a musician, and the responses are completely abnormal and ridiculous. And that's what makes them so funny.
No, he's an amazing interview the entire time, and you just never know where he's going to go with any of his answers. Even the end credits of him being a sales clerk for a chapeau shop.
We don't have that in stock right now.
And like I said, it just influences, like I was even telling you, just talking about this, of just how much of an influence extras with Ricky Gervais must have seen this movie. To a lot of their scenes were improvisations of what Nigel does in that scene,
Mm-hmm.
cutting off of saying like, no, we don't have this color in stock.
Yeah.
And it's so ridiculous, but it just adds to the character of who he is. Like you see this guy as just this talented musician
Mm-hmm.
who, with the greatest camera angles ever as he's doing solos. But at the same time, he's so out of it when it comes to actual life.
Yeah.
In general, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's a good choice.
I do enjoy too. Just I think it's the Marty DeBerge stuff is just really funny. I even looked at the beginning when he's interviewing the entire band, and he's asking the questions like, what happened to your first drummer? And they're so serious about it, like, gardening accident that we can't really talk. The police said just let it lie or whatever, like,
Yeah.
just leave it be. And then it was like, what happened to the second guy? And then that was the spontaneous combustion, and it's just like, and they're so serious about it. And then when he starts asking him, and he was reading those reviews about the previous albums, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to use the word because I'm trying to avoid using any too foul language for anyone who might be listening, but when he brings up that shark sandwich, and when he says what the review said, the two words for the review, and the look on their face, and it's like the only time they're gonna break character. You can see they're trying to hold it, and that they don't laugh as soon as he says it to them. And
Yeah.
and Rob Reiner has the advantage of being off screen, so he can probably smile and not like burst out laughing, but they're on screen, and then you can't write that. Come on, it's just really funny. And then even later, remember when they're in like that hamburger joint, and it's just Nigel and David, and so how did you two meet? And they're talking about being kids, and they sing that stupid song about cry all the way home.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and like I'm getting annoyed as I'm thinking about their little crooning moments together. Whether it's at Elvis's grave.
Oh, that's a pretty good scene. Just that. Since my baby, he's so off key every single time, and David's just like, no.
Well,
yeah, that's pretty funny.
I will say though, is one thing I don't want to forget about favorite scenes is I was surprised at how much I laughed at Derek Smalls having that interview when Nigel and David break up, and he's talking about how lucky they are. I'll just give you the quote where he's like, "We're very lucky in the band that we have two visionaries, David and Nigel. They're like poets, like Shelley and Byron. They're two distinct types of visionaries. It's like fire and ice, basically. I feel my role in the band is to be somewhere in the middle of that, kind of like lukewarm water." and it made me laugh just this basis, just how he feels like he's just, the most normal, doesn't mean anything to the band, and that's basically Derek Smalls in a nutshell, is just lukewarm water.
And that stupid pipe that he has.
Yeah, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Mr. Jazz or whatever he
yeah.
is.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. All right. Okay, why don't we move into our favorite lines? And as hard as it's going to be again, I wanted to kind of limit us to 3. So maybe we can kind of go back and forth, because we might have some that might cross each other as the same lines. But what would be your first favorite line in the movie? I did have to write them down, and I'm seriously hoping I didn't write them incorrectly. But
Well, I unfortunately might be taking one of yours, but you're the one that highlighted this line, and maybe I'm gonna.
I already know what it is.
I'm gonna get you to say it because you make me laugh every time.
Oh, me too.
But it's one of my favorites. Is the end of the movie, the credits with Viv Savage, the keyboardist. Maybe if you can say that
Okay, so what
line.
does he ask him? It's like, what would your life philosophy be? Is that what he says? Or what is your life
I think
philosophy?
I think so. Yeah.
He's like, my philosophy is, and he's not even looking at the camera. He's kind of looking off. He's like, I can't even say it either. Have a good time. All the time. It's just, and he's so satisfied when he says it.
And like I think the best part about that line is it just really tells you about how much of a goof that keyboardist is.
On how much drugs he's on.
And just of all the things of him wearing Viking helmets and like evil scientist gear when he's playing.
Well, even when he's playing Big Bottom and he's just losing his mind on keyboard.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's, oh, what a sick line though. That line, it gets me every time too. It's just, you don't expect it because especially I think he only says one line earlier in the movie before that.
Yeah.
And it's not till the credits he gets to have like one of the, well, for us at least, one of the best lines in the movie.
Well, even from what I can see online, that line is pretty revered as one of the better lines.
Okay,
So,
well, okay, mine comes from, and I'm surprised how many I actually have from Ian.
yep.
And I'm having a hard time picking just one from him because I really want to go with, and this twisted fruit when he said that hotel clerk, and how serious that hotel clerk's face turns.
Yeah.
But I want to hit you with one that you probably don't remember, and it's when David's girlfriend or whatever joins and basically says, maybe it's time for somebody to take control of this group who knows the group better than you do. And then he's like, excuse me, and he starts losing it. And then he stops and then he says, I won't work with someone who's dressed like an Australian disaster. It just, when I heard that, I was like, what does that even mean? It's such a dumb line, but I refuse to work with someone who's dressed like an Australian disaster.
Well, the best part is even watching it before you said is I did notice how they like kind of choreographed so that they were getting ready for that scene because their outfits get more and more ridiculous
Yeah,
as like so just like they were waiting for that line to come.
yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
yeah. Yeah, no, again, it just kind of threw me for a loop because it's just, it's not one I don't think anybody really remembers, and it's kind of rude towards Australians, but it's so bizarre that it's funny because he's so angry when he says it. It's just such a strange line.
No, that's pretty amazing. But Ian is just such a creep. But no, I'm gonna go on that with another Ian line
Okay.
where they're talking about Smell the Glove, the album,
Yep.
and Ian's like, it's sexist, and then Nigel's like, what's wrong with being sexy?
Yeah, that one gets me. That one's really funny too. What's wrong with being sexy? No, sexist. Yeah, that one's really good. That's kind of like it's almost like you expect that line, but it's still funny regardless. Like you're just like you're waiting for that to come up. Like you just know these guys are that dumb that they're gonna misunderstand what sexist means, but it still
Yeah.
makes you laugh because he
Yeah.
looks so serious when he's saying it. Yeah, no, that one's really funny too.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so this one comes. This is Nigel again, and this one comes from that scene we were talking earlier about when they say they're complaining about that. I can't remember who the other musician is that has that provocative album cover. That they're like, well, how did this get through? And that's when he's explaining about the, oh, well, this is reverse sexism or however he explains it, and Ian explains it to them so that he doesn't take the heat again for it. And then
Yeah.
Nigel pauses and he's like, "Oh, it's really or say, yeah, really, it's a fine line between being stupid and clever." And I think it just sums up the whole movie, basically. I think that's why that line makes me laugh, because it's like he just summarized the entire movie, the fine line between being stupid and clever.
It's such a smart line, and
Yeah.
it kind of sets the tone is that you realize if you already didn't realize what the movie was about, it's early enough in the movie where you're able to see what they're going for and how much they're pushing. But that line is amazing just because you're seeing them just go about all these stupid endeavors, and it's just you're pushing it where just all the one-liners, Rob Reiner, it's like everything is well crafted, and so it's an excellent line for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. And what's your final one there? And I didn't put mine in any kind of order. I don't think I can. There's just too many.
Yeah. Well, it's like being the fact that I had to use in other things with lukewarm water and lick my love pump is I'm gonna go with when they're talking about one of their drummers dying and how he choked on vomit.
I know what your line is going to be.
But just the fact that it's like they didn't know whose vomit it
Yeah.
was. And then just with Nigel, you can't really dust for vomit.
Yeah, I had that on my short list. You can't really dust for vomit. So gross. But again, it's super clever because with all due respect to those artists who that had happened to, right? We do know like that had happened to oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Jimi Hendrix. So
And
it
Moon.
yeah, like these people, this happened to them choking on their own vomit. So like on one hand, you probably shouldn't laugh at this, but at the same, it's like again, like that's really clever that the first thing your mind goes to that because you're like, oh, I've heard of this happening where people have overdosed and then they've ended up choking on their own vomit, and then when they're so serious about it and they're like, but it's somebody else's vomit that he choked on and died, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so gross. But it's kind of funny at the same point. And then when he's like, you can't really dust for vomit, it's like, oh, it's just
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a fine line of like, are they really crossing the line for that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to pick what my last one will be. This is an honorable mention because we brought it up earlier, and I actually wrote down the exact quote, and this is from that drummer. He said when he's asking about like, aren't you afraid of dying? And then when he's like, no, I'm not afraid because I have a good percentage chance or something. And that's when that Marty DeBerge says like the law of averages say you will survive.
Yeah.
But that's just an honorable mention. I'm struggling to pick the last one. Okay, and this one's okay. This one's cheating because this was actually in the auditory commentary, and
Yep.
it is a bad word. I'm not going to say it, but it's when they get in that limo, and then remember the guy's talking to them about Frank Sinatra and all that, and then you could see David looking straight at him, and he looks so pissed off. And then when
Yeah.
that window just scrolls up, and he's still staring at him the entire time. But in the DVD commentary, so that guy, he says something, says a bad word, and he's like, limeys. I don't know. Do you know what limeys mean? Like, I don't. So I'm assuming it's some sort of derogatory British term or something.
Yeah, it's a derogatory slang term for British people, I think.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
in the auditory or in the audio commentary, he says that, and they start losing it. They're like, what are you? You're just a limo driver, you. And then they say they drop the F-bomb, and then they're like, limmy, and they come like they're mixing up limey with limo driver, and they're like limmy. And it's just so dumb. And then because that guy kept talking about how much he liked Frank Sinatra, and he's like, Frank's dead. You hear somebody shout, Frank's dead. Like, I know it's cheating because it's not actually in the movie, but like when you can listen to an audio commentary and it's just as good as like the film, like that's pretty impressive.
Well, that's the one thing that I do want to bring up is watching the DVD. I don't know how you watch the movie, but just the amount of time that they put in the commentary, the deleted scenes, and just even navigating through the menus of like the title screen being too small to I accidentally got caught up because I couldn't hear it because my kids were around, so I tried to put on closed captions,
Hmm.
and then I got a whole thing from Nigel and just going off about why is there Spanish subtitles on this thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, just overall just well done throughout the entire movie.
Doesn't that in the special features, because at the beginning of the movie too, when you start it up and it has them talking over top of the intro, and then doesn't David at one point say, "Oh, special features"? Nigel's like, "What's that?" And he's like, David's like, "Oh, well, they'll talk about my hair or something," and then he says something like, "They'll zoom in on or we'll focus on Derek's package" or something like. It's just so, it's just like, oh,
Well,
sick.
well, you know that they focused on the
Oh,
packages.
several times.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed one of my favorite quotes, and it actually ties into my scenes. It's back to that. Sorry, I got to jump back a step. So remember when he's like, you'd hear the sustain or whatever. Remember he's got all those guitars, and then he points out that one in the back,
Yeah.
and he's like, "I'd never played it before," and then he's just like, "Why haven't you played it before?" He's like, "I don't want to touch it," and then he's like, and then Marty DeBerge takes like a step forward. He's like, "Don't touch it, don't touch it, don't ever touch it," and then they like pause. He's like, "Don't even look at it." Like it's possessed or something. And then that Marty DeBerge looks really stressed out and he like looks away. Don't even look at it. So stupid.
Oh, that was pretty.
Oh,
I just about brought that up as well. It's pretty amazing just how stressed out he gets about a guitar that he's never played and never touched.
he refuses to play. Oh yeah, I don't know. We
Absolutely.
could keep going on. There's so many other things that we're probably missing, but I think we've hit quite a few of the key points.
Yeah. No, we had a good time.
Oh, I'm still laughing about this twisted fruit and then I like how that guy takes a step back after he gets called a twisted fruit and that woman steps in and then he's got to get in the last word where he's like, "I'm just as God made me, sir."
Well, I just appreciate that woman has a smile on her face as
Yeah.
the line is being said. That guy's so offended and she's just having a good time.
Yeah. Oh, it's just yeah. There's so much more we could probably hit, but as I said, I think we've hit more than enough. If you've seen this movie, you know exactly what we're talking about. I'm not a musician in any right, and I find this movie still absolutely amazing and hilarious. So, and it takes a lot for me to actually laugh out loud in a film. Like I usually am sort of the stoic person, like there's kind of chuckles here and there, but no, this actually makes me like actually burst out laughing because it's so dumb.
Yeah, for sure. And I would just add that it's the type of movie that you just the more you watch it, the more you get out of it. And there's so few. I mean, every movie kind of strives to have that if you're a comedy or some kind of movie like that. But this one, you can actually say that you'll pick up on things and actually look forward to parts that come up if you watch it. And just even watching this movie twice throughout and then watching extra scenes, is you just can't get enough of it. And I can't recommend it enough from my end.
Yeah. And now, of course, one other scene just came to mind, and when Nigel's losing his cool about the crackers that look like bread, he can't fold the bologna into it, and how Ian's just agreeing with it. "You're right, this is absolutely ridiculous." It's like,
No,
"Well, you just
well,
gotta fold it like this," and then he's like, "It ain't gonna work." And then, "I'm a professional. I'll be fine. I'll be fine."
well, Ian didn't agree with him at first,
No,
and
but
he's
then
like,
but then he
you
was
just,
like, "You're right. It's absolutely ridiculous."
you just fold this meat.
Yeah, it's so dumb. Like yeah, that's kind of an underrated scene that I don't think kind of gets brought up. But yeah, anyways, I think you hit the nail on the head by just saying you seem to keep finding stuff and you can keep drawing from this movie. It's the kind of movie you should kind of maybe put down for 6 months to a year and come back to, and you'll get a lot out of it. A lot of mileage will come back if you kind of balance how much you're watching it. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. I don't like to recommend stuff very often, but if you need a good laugh and if you have any interest in the music industry, even if it's today's music industry, I think you can still find some enjoyment out of this. And just if you have a bit of a dry wit sense of humor, you will very much enjoy this.
I completely agree. I don't think I can say anything else.
I will leave with one last point. I did see a guy who is talking about this. He is from the UK, and he said that to him, now I don't know, I think he works in the music industry in some regard. I don't know in what fashion. He said to him, though, those three actors have by far the best acted British accents he's ever seen in a movie by American actors.
Mm,
And
that's interesting.
yeah, I thought that was interesting because they do, again, like you might really not notice and think, okay, these are three British guys, but no, like you hear them in interviews, they're very much American actors. Like they're not British whatsoever, but they do really good accents.
No, and I think that point just shows you just like the beginning of the podcast, just you can tell how much talent is kind of in this movie, and just the ad libs and just how much they enjoyed making this movie. And so I agree with everything you said. I can't recommend it enough. I actually disagree that you watch this movie 6 months. I think you could put this movie on
Every
one
week.
day, watch the next day, and you'd enjoy it just as much. So.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I think on that note, though, we're going to wrap up there. So thanks for joining Swordfish and myself, Sushi, and we'll catch you down that road.
Have a good time.